Hi, everyone. All right. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to be doing a deep dive into dried flower jewelry. And I'm so excited to share this with you because it's very, very easy to do and so simple, but yet it makes a really expensive and nice, beautiful looking piece of jewelry. So I'm going to be showing you all the different techniques that you need to know how to use the flowers, how to lay them down, how to use UV resin to hold them in, how to use bezels, how to add color, how to add glitter. We're covering it all. So if you are a beginner for the very first time using UV resin, this is the class for you, and we have lots to talk about. If you've used UV resin before, I hope you'll learn something new from these techniques. So if we want to switch to the top-down camera, these are some of the projects that we're going to be making today. I'm going to lift this up. Oh, no. Well, you can kind of see a little, some of the flowers are a little light colored, you can't see, but these are all necklaces made with bezels. The bezel is just the frame that we're going to design in, and dried flowers. So everything that we're using here is available at Michaels on michaels.com. And I'm going to try to leave this here so we can kind of refer back to it. But these are some of the products that we're going to be using. Over. And this is the star of the show here, which is UV resin. So this is a resin that will dry under UV light. Actually, it doesn't dry, it cures under UV light. And it cures almost instantly. So you can make each of these necklaces only takes a few minutes. And it will, this resin will stay in a liquid form until you expose it to UV rays, either from a light, which I'll talk about the light in a minute, or from sunlight. So sunlight has UV rays. So if you're working near an open window and sunlight streaming in, it may cure before you want it to. So just watch that. But this is UV resin. These are some of the flowers. We have a lot of different flowers at Michaels. Like these are all kind of color coordinated. Inside each of these packages, you have a little bit of greenery, several different types of flowers for you to work with. Put those aside. Then we have the bezels. So as I said, these are just frames for you to create in. And we're going to fill this with flowers and with UV resin to hold everything in place. These bezels are available in a lot of different shapes. We have sort of basic shapes, and we have some fun shapes as well, like this butterfly. Next, this blue surface that you see me working on is actually a mat. This is a silicone mat. And you'll see that a lot of the products that we work with are silicone. That's because resin does not stick to silicone when it cures. It'll peel right off. So this is just protecting my work surface. I want to make sure that I'm not crafting directly on like a dining room table, for example, because if you drip and then you get the lamp on the drip, it'll harden onto your surface, and you don't want that to happen. Next, we have this very cute little UV lamp. And so it's got a button on top. When I hit that button, you can see those lights come on. This is a 9-watt UV light. But as I said, you can also cure in sunlight. And we're going to talk about cure times. Cure times for UV resin can be as low as 2 minutes or up to 10 minutes, depending on what lamp you're using, depending on if you're using sunlight, if you're outdoors. So the things that we're crafting together, we're crafting in real time today. So you're going to see how fast the process is. And then the final couple things that I have over here, I have some wood sticks, I have some tweezers, I have some silicone bowls. Here's silicone again. These are mixing bowls. This is sold in a little mixing kit where all of the rest of these products are sold at Michaels. And it's very flexible, so you can pour out of the spout. And then we have, this is a special resin tape. This is actually a polyester tape that is a very low tack adhesive. And this is what you're going to need to work with the bezels. All right, so those are our basics, and let's get started. So first thing I want to do is pick out a bezel to work with. And for my first one, I'm actually going to use, for my first one, I'm going to use this circle shape. Just a simple circle. These are available in gold and silver. You can see that from the side, how wide it is. And the first step I need to do is use some of this tape. So I have to find the end. And just cut a little piece of that tape off. All right, so I have it sticky side up. And I take my bezel and I kind of look at it to see if I can notice which is the front and the back. The front and the back look identical, but each bezel might have a little, I don't know, something on it that makes you think that I want that in the front or I want that in the back. So I'm going to do this here. All right, so I'm putting that bezel on the tape and then really kind of like making sure that that tape is stuck to the bezel. Okay. So I have this sticky side up. You can see it's sticky. For me to work with it a little easier, I like to kind of flip that one corner up because I'm going to hold that with my finger. And then I can move it around without it getting stuck to everything. All right, so that is the first step, is cutting your tape, laying your bezel down, making sure that that tape is making contact with the bottom of the bezel. And then we bring in our UV resin. So this is hard UV resin. It cures to a hard plastic or glass-like finish that's crystal clear. And so our first thing is you want to go straight from the bottle and put just a very small layer in the bottom of this. So I'm just going to pour out that much straight from the bottle. Then I go in with a wood stick or a silicone tool, and I'm just going to move that around because I want it to make contact with the walls, because we're doing, this is a first layer, and this will just make sure that we can create on top of this, and what we create is not going to seep underneath the bezel. Okay, so I brought that to all the sides. I also, on the side here, have a paper towel that I can use just to, you know, keep my tools clean, anything that dips in the resin. All right, and then that is our first layer. So you can see, I'm going to bring this in just a little closer. I poured that straight from the bottle. There are no bubbles, there are no problems, and we can just go ahead and start curing. So I'm going to bring my lamp in and hit the button. So when I hit that button, the lamp turns on for 1 minute. It has a built-in timer for 1 minute. So you'll see me if I hit it again. Well, if I hit it again right now, it toggles off, but it's a 1 minute timer. And so cure times, as I said, for clear resin are going to be 3 minutes, let's say 2-3 minutes. But if you put stuff in the resin, if you put tints, if you put glitter, that may block some of the light. So you may need to put it under for longer if you're using tints, if it gets really dark. In the sunlight, depending on how strong the sunlight is, maybe 5 to 10 minutes is what it needs outside. I enjoy curing outdoors, in even on a sunny windowsill, because you get just a deep, pure cure in the sunlight. All right, so this has been on. Yes, there is a little reflection there. I don't know if you can see. So that has been under for a minute, and I'm just going to tap this. You can see this is no longer liquid. It is a hardened plastic, and that's kind of the blank canvas that we need to create on. So we are creating today with dried flowers, as I said. And I opened up one of the packages that I showed you. Here's the package. Here's what it'll look like in the stores. And we like to, in our office, we like to keep the packaging, these little trays that it comes in, because it's just is a clever way of storing these where they won't get dusty, they won't blow away. So we store them in these trays and just kind of stack them together. So these are the flowers that we're working with. This first project that I'm going to do, we're just going to keep it very, very simple because I want to show you how easy this is. And so I'm going to put just a little dot of resin right in the center. And this is going to act kind of like a glue. I'm going to dip my wood stick. See, the wood stick has this wedge end and a pointy end. So I'm going to use the wedge end and just dip that in to get a little bit on there. And that helps me pick up one of these flowers. And also that dot helps me give it a landing spot. And it's that simple to add flowers. So straight from the bottle on top of that, we're going in with more resin and we're going to encase this and fill the bezel up to the top. So you can see the resin is self-leveling. You can see it's kind of working slowly to fill this area. If I let it sit for a little bit, it'll kind of just level itself, but I'm not patient, so let's help it level. And you can see in here, I did get one bubble. So this is a bubble. It's unlike the bubbles that you may get using a two-part resin, if you're familiar with using two-part epoxy resin. Those are bubbles that are made from the mixing of chemicals. This is a bubble. It's just an air bubble from squeezing that out. And so here's how you can deal with the bubbles. You can try to pop it. It's a really small bubble like this. You might be better off just trying to scoop it out like I just did. Also, if you got any resin on the edge here, you can kind of clean that up a little bit before curing. And that's it. We're ready to cure this. Bring our lamp in again. And so we're going to let this go for a few minutes. I'm probably just going to let this go for 2 cycles. So that's 2 minutes. And let me fix my lamp. It keeps moving on me. Okay. So also, in addition to this style lamp, we do have a flashlight style. So I'm going to show you. Can we see this? Turn it on. There you go. So the flashlight style is nice because you can hold it and you can bring it to your project. The bridge style lamp here, you kind of have to bring your project to it because it has a cord. It's about 18 inches, 2 feet long cord. The cord plugs into a USB power source. So that would be maybe how you charge your cell phone. You can plug it into a laptop, into a battery that has any USB inputs. That's how you're going to run this lamp. All right, so that went for a minute. The light turned off automatically. Let me turn it back on again. We're going to let that go another minute. I just like to kind of turn it maybe. I just want to make sure that the UV light is kind of bathing the whole thing. And there we go. So if you do have any questions, I see some people coming in the chat, and I've missed a couple of them, but if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. I'll try to answer them live with you guys now. And that's a great question that we just got from Janet. Thank you, Janet. She asked, is the side down on the tape going to be the front? And that's a great question. In this case, no, the side that we're looking at is the front. So we want to front face those flowers so that what we're seeing is what the necklace will look like. It is the opposite case though, when you're working with molds. And so while that's curing, I'll let that go one more. I'll just talk about molds. So there's 2 main ways to use UV resin. One is in bezels. Everything we're doing in this class is bezels. But the other main way to use UV resin is in molds. And this is a silicone mold. You can see by the shapes that it makes earring components. And so when you are making something in a mold, you are placing the front face down, because when you pop it out of the mold, the front face will be, you'll flip it over. So if we have time at the end of the class, I'll show you a project using a mold. All right, so this is gone for maybe 2.5 minutes or so. I'm going to pick it up. The first thing you'll notice is that it's a little warm. This is from a chemical reaction that has happened when it is curing. And it's one of the, what happens is it warms it up. And so the metal here is a little warm to the touch. Just be careful with that. Then you do want to let it cool. And then you want to peel off that tape. You'll notice the tape is a lot stickier now than when we first use it. You can reuse this. Here's my piece of tape. You can reuse this piece of tape if you want. It will become stickier over time, but it is reusable. And so this is what we have. I did see another question come up in the chat. Can you use your own dried flowers? Absolutely, yes. Any dried flower will work in this, whether it's a homemade dried flower or something that you buy at the store. I caution you on using any type of non-dried flower, fresh flower. Those just have too much water in them, and it'll look good right at the beginning, but over time it will degrade inside the resin, and you don't want that. So you do want to use dried or preserved flowers. You can dry them in the microwave, in a book. There's a lot of different ways to dry flowers. All right, so there's our first pendant. We're going to put this off to the side. And actually, I'm going to bring in my little sample board here to show you options. All right, so far I've shown you how to do just a flower with a clear background. So you can also add layers of flowers, and this is a perfect example. I'm going to pick this one up and show you. So that also has a clear background, but it has multiple flowers, and when I tilt it to the side, you'll see, hopefully you'll be able to see, maybe not, that those flowers are kind of like at different levels, different layers. And so that's another design aspect that you can incorporate into your jewelry, is placing different flowers at different levels. So that is what I'm going to show you next, how to cluster the flowers and do them at different levels. All right, so we're going to use a teardrop shape, and I'm going to get another piece of tape. Again, sticky side up. Stick this on there and press it down. I like to press it into the silicone mat because it has a little bit of give. And I like kind of wiggle it, and that'll make sure that that's stuck down. Okay, let's get out some flowers for this one. This is a sampling of the different flowers that are available. And you can see there are these more lacy looking flowers, and then there are these are plum blossoms here. And when you layer these together, you can just get a really pretty look. But first things first, we have to put our first layer down. So straight from the bottle, you can see we did get a little bubble there. A question in the chat from Susan, would double-sided tape be good to use? I would not recommend using regular tape or mailing tape, packing tape, anything like that. This is a special tape that is made to use with UV resin. It's a low-tack tape. If you use packing tape, I mean, feel free to experiment. But when I've used packing tape, it sticks too much after it cures. It just is too sticky. It's too hard to rip off. So be careful with that. So I did have a bubble, but it kind of disappeared. It looks like I have a tiny little one there. Let's see. Oh, got it away. First try. All right, so let me go in and move this to the edges. I'm going to turn this so that I can see all of these edges and make sure that I'm making contact with the metal walls. Wipe my stick off, bring my lamp in, and let's cure that first layer down. More paper towels here. Okay, so we're going to go colorful for this design. Question from Catherine, can you reuse the tape? You can. And so on the next project, I'm going to reuse this and show you. Another question, I'm still wondering how large a flower you can use in the resin. Well, it depends on the size of your bezel. You'll notice that things that are sold in UV resin craft are smaller size because they're jewelry sized. We suggest to use UV resin in smaller projects. If you have a large project, like something the size of, you know, a full rose that you want to encapsulate in resin, there are other kinds of resin that work better for those kind of 3D projects than UV resin. UV resin is better for small things like jewelry. For large things, you want to look at using an epoxy resin, a 2-part resin that it takes, you know, 24 to 36 hours to cure. So it's not this instant crafting that we're doing today, but it's better for larger scale projects. Okay, so again, let's put 1 drop there. And I am going to smooth out that drop because I'm going to be putting flowers kind of all in the center area. And let's see, I'm going to start with this white lacy flower as like a background. Oops. Come on. Its friend wants to stick to it. And press that right in there. And then I want to make sure you're pressing this down. You don't want to, sometimes if you're going in with a thick flower, you might trap a little air under there and get a bubble. So just make sure you're pressing it down. Lorena's question in the chat is, the flowers are floating, how do you press it down? Well, you want to work in thin layers. So you'll notice that little bit of resin that I put in here was a very thin layer, and that will just hold it down to the bottom. All right, so that's my first layer. And I'm actually going to add a little more resin because we want this floating flower effect. So I'm going to put a little more here. We're not filling it up to the top yet. We're still leaving room to work. And again, I'm going to make that go all the way. And you want to be careful. These flowers are very, very delicate. So as I'm moving this resin on top of the flowers, I'm trying not to scrape the flowers themselves because I could rip them. Okay. Is it me or does it look crooked? I think it looks crooked. Move the whole thing over. Ooh. All right, so let's layer that up. So we're going to cure that layer, and then as the last step, we're going to add colorful flowers on top and then cure that layer. While that's curing, let's talk about other things that you can use in resin beside dried flowers. There are 100 things that you can put inside resin. Dried flowers are very beautiful, but also glitter. Any type of metal charm. So let me just show you some things here while that's curing. So any type of glitter, fine glitter, chunky glitter. You have like sort of glitter flakes. You can use seashells. In fact, I have some seashells right here. You can use little metal charms. You can, you've seen these polymer clay slices. Those work great inside there. This is a mica powder. You can put that in there. Paper. Paper works well. Stickers. Oops. Put that with me. Paper, stickers, photographs. Here's an interesting one. Candy. These are some little candy sprinkles. You can put almost anything in and inside resin to make your design. All right, so now we're ready for our next layer. Another drop there on top. Try to smooth that out a little bit. All right, and then go into my flowers. Let me get this pretty blue one. And I'm just gently patting that down because it's easy to trap air under that big flower. And a little pink one right here. Wiping my stick off. And we're going to fill it to the top with resin. You can see it's kind of leveling itself. We can encourage it to level by lifting it up a little bit. Get to that other edge there. Now I didn't quite fill it to the top. You don't have to fill it to the top, but it can just look a little more finished if you do. All right, and then, you know, I like to run my stick around the edges just to make sure that that resin is kind of puckered there. And this is ready to cure. I thought I saw somebody asking about a beach class. So beach jewelry is really super fun to make with UV resin. I'll show you a couple examples while that's curing. So this was from a class that we did. This is also another bezel project where we did like a beachy seascape with real sand. We made some waves with tinted resin, some metal charms in there. I'm also going to show you this pendant that we made, and that's with seed beads. So it's a lot easier to do this than learn how to weave seed beads, I'll tell you that much. I'll show you one more project here. This is a pin that we made. So we took a bezel. This was a teardrop shaped bezel. Let me move this so you can really get a good look. This is a teardrop shaped bezel. We cut off the tip. So it started like this with the loop at the top. We cut that off and then we turned it around to make it a strawberry shape. And just in the same techniques that I've shown you, we've added dried flowers and we added a colorful background, and I'm going to show you how to do the colorful background next. But this is actually a pin. So instead of having that loop at the top, we added this pin back and just adhered it with more UV resin. UV resin is a great adhesive. You can use it in place of super glue for anything, and it's great for adding metal. But that's how we made this cute little strawberry. All right, so this is going through another round under the light. The lamp is available in white and pink. We're using the pink one today. And like I said, this is a 9-watt UV lamp. There are a ton of different UV lamps out there. You just want to be careful that you're not using a lamp that's too strong, because what it can do is it can cause the resin to kind of smoke and smell bad. So be careful with that. All right, so that is done. Let's pick this up and show you what we got. And it is warm, but I can take it off. There's the back. Now it looks like I did get a little bit of a bubble there on the side. So this can happen if your tape isn't stuck well to the bottom. When it's curing, because it gets hot, the heat can like suck in a little air from the side. So be careful with that. But I like it. A question, does Michael sell pieces that can make rings? Yes, so we do sell a couple different ring molds. I'm just gonna grab a handful of rings that we've made. All of these rings we've made with UV resin. So just a simple ring, simple ring with some glitter in it. We have a cocktail ring mold. You can also put sort of like focal pieces on the front. That butterfly came from another mold. The ring came from one mold. We put them together. These are super fun to make. But that is using a mold. Okay, so I am going to try to reuse the same piece of tape. And moving on to our next project. Ooh, sticking to me. Which we are going to use a triangle. So sticking that down to the tape that I'm reusing, making sure it is stuck to the back. We have a question from Hattie. I'm sorry, I missed it here. I got sidetracked. If you just want, Jen, I'm not sure if you can jump in and help Hattie out.
Stephanie, she just asked, do you have to use molds for Resin? Can you use different molds for jewelry, or can you?
Molds. Okay, so let's talk about molds for just a sec. So this is the mold that I showed you earlier. You'll notice how clear it is. You can see that bezel through it. You need to use a clear mold like this for UV resin, because again, it's curing with the light. The light's got to be able to hit it. It can't be blocked. So silicone molds that look like this is like a candy mold, is a no-no. This will not work, because opaque molds just kind of mess with the curing. So you can use other molds, but they have to be clear like this. Okay, so here is our next project, a triangle. So what we're going to do with this one is we're going to add a colorful background. And I'll show you, let's see. Bring in my examples again. So this one has a white background. This has actually a black background. If I turn it around, you'll see that that's not the black of the velvet, that is actually in the piece. Adding a colorful background can really make the piece pop, make the flower on the piece pop. So I'll show you how to do that. Look. So to add color, you want to use tints. So these are actual resin tints from UV Resin Craft. And I'm actually going to use this pink tint because I think that would be pretty. And I want to bring in a silicone cup. So you want to use this mixing cup. You pour directly into the cup from the bottle. And then add your tint. So I'm going to start with just one drop. Actually, I'll do kind of a drop and a half. These tints are very concentrated, so you want to just be careful with how much you're adding. And let's stir it up. So you could see just from that how dark it gets. I mean, you're mixing a very small amount of resin in here, so it doesn't need a lot to tint it. Kind of matches our lamp. Okay, so now I want to go in with the tinted resin as our first layer. And now I can squeeze this and use the spout. And I want to make a thin layer. I'm not trying to like make this go all the way to the top. And then pull it into the walls of the bezel. I think I'm actually going to wipe this side of my stick off and switch to the pointy side, and that can help me get into these corners here.
Hey, Stephanie, this is Felicia.
Hi.
There's been a couple of questions in regards to the smell of the resin and so forth. Can you speak on any type of protective gear that someone may can wear?
Yep. So, we didn't talk safety precautions, but that's an excellent question. If you have sensitive skin, definitely if you have a resin allergy, but if you have sensitive skin, you want to wear gloves. I don't wear gloves. I've been working with this product for years. I've never had a problem, but I don't have sensitive skin. So that's really up to you if you want to wear gloves. Also, if you want to wear a particulate filtering mask, that would be a good idea. If you are doing this for many, many hours at a time, you want to make sure you're in a well ventilated room, and or use a mask. So it's really up to you, kind of your level of comfortability with this, as to what protective equipment that you want to wear. And as for the smell, there is a slight smell when you're curing this resin. The smell will increase if you're using a lamp that's too strong for it, and you'll get that smoking as it cures. But it's not super strong compared to other UV resins out there. All right, so that went for 1 minute. I'm actually going to, because I added tint and it's dark, I'm just going to cure it another minute. And what I can also do is I can turn it over and cure the side. If I think that the rays have not penetrated down, I can just turn it over and it'll cure that side. And so that's how I can add a background color. And this, we're doing a bright color, but black works really well. White looks really well. And let's see. So here's my like lacy flower. Don't be afraid to get in there and cut your flowers up. So this lacy flower, it has these tiny little like florets here at the end. And I can cut those up and it becomes like flower confetti. I'm kind of like going around the center of this flower and cutting off these little floret pieces. There we go. And this was the center of the flower here. I still see some more on there. Let's see if we can cut those off. All right, so now we have our flower confetti and we want to add that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit here, just a tiny little bit, just enough to get it to stick. And I'm going to do a little of an ombre kind of a feeling. So I'm going to concentrate more of my floral pieces up here to the top. And I just bring them in one by one. And place them exactly where I want them to go. Keeping the tip of the wood stick wet, that will help you be able to pick these up. And then as we get down here, I just want them to be a little more sparse. Once they're down, you can still move them around. I think I need a little more at the top to really emphasize this ombre we're doing. All right. And so we have a lot of flowers left over to make another piece, but let's cure that down. So we've done all the work of placing those flowers just so perfectly in that super thin layer. We do not want to take the bottle and just pour up to fill the mold because, to fill the bezel, because that will just kind of disperse all of the work that you've done and so carefully placed. So I want to cure that down for a minute, and then I'm going to add my top coat. And the top coat is going to be clear because we want all that work to show. All right, so I'm going to turn that off. That's only been on for about 30 seconds, but it's enough to set that in place. And now let's fill this bezel to the top with clear. Yes, a question in the chat from Hattie. Thank you, Hattie. Question was, if it's still tacky after you cure it, should you just cure it more? The answer is yes. You can cure it as many times as you need. You can't really over cure this resin, but what I would suggest is if it's still a little bit tacky after 4 or 5 minutes under the lamp, you may just want to put it on a sunny windowsill for a little while. You could leave it there until the next day, and that it's just the rays from the sun can cure resin, can get that little, its surface tackiness is called surface oxidation. It's from the air hitting it. Curing it in the sun can really take care of that. All right, this is our final cure here, and we'll add that to our other pieces that we made, which are here. And then I'll show you how to turn this in. Right now we have beautiful pendants, but we want beautiful jewelry. So I'll show you how to turn this jewelry into, or this pendants into jewelry. So here's the first one that we made. I'm actually going to add the necklace to this one because it is silver. I have a silver chain here. So here is a piece of chain. Michael sells this chain. Michael's also sells pre-made necklaces. So this is unfinished chain, meaning it doesn't have a clasp on it. It's just a piece of chain. They sell finished chain, which has the lobster clasp, and you can just take that apart and kind of string it on that way. But if all you have is unfinished chain, I'll show you how to do it. So you can slide that right through the loop at the top of your bezel. If it doesn't go through, do not worry, because it may go through this one. Let me see. Yeah, so depending on how large your chain is, it may just go directly through the loop at the top. If it doesn't do that, do not worry. Or if you want a thicker chain, thicker chains are kind of cool nowadays, you can connect that with this little piece here. This is called a jump ring. One of the basic building blocks of really any kind of jewelry. And you'll need some pliers. And each of these jump rings has a little break at the top. And you want to find that break and situate your pliers on either side. So you can use 2 pliers, which I'm going to do. And you want to bring one toward you and one away from you. See how that opened that? So once it's open, I can string something on. I can string my chain on. And then close it. And you close it in the same way that you open it, just opposite. Close that like that. And that's how you can add a chain. Okay, so let's see what we got here. Here's our colorful background, our ombre piece. So I don't know if you saw that on camera, but this was the piece of tape that I reused. And you saw how much harder that was for me to get that off. But this is what we have. Very cute little, this would make gorgeous earrings. This would make a really cute necklace pendant as well, maybe clustered with some other things. Okay, I did see a question come up about will it twist? It could, because this, let's see, depends on how your loop is facing. This loop is facing this way. The jump ring is perpendicular to it, which means the chain runs through it like this. If you wanted the chain to run through the other way, you would have to add another jump ring. I hope you understand that, because they're like chain links like this. And if it's not hanging correctly, you may need to add another jump ring for it to hang the way you want it. All right, so almost done here. If you have any questions, go ahead and add them to the chat. I said that we would make a molded piece if we had time. And so I'm going to do that now. This is a silicone mold and another beautiful way to use dried flowers. So what I'm going to do, I'll show you, it's kind of the opposite of what we did for this. Because when you're working with a mold, the part that's down inside the mold is the front. So the very first thing I do is add a little bit of clear to the mold. And I just want to move that around. You'll also notice that some shapes come with this little like silicone peg here. That is what makes the hole at the top of the molded shape, so that you can connect it to something. All right, so I'm just kind of scooting that around, getting a lower level on there. And okay, and now I want to use more of my flower confetti that I didn't use in the last piece. And you can really take your time in this step and move each component exactly where you want it to be. You have all the time in the world because this will not harden. It's not like you're fighting the clock. This will not harden until you want it to. I saw a question just come up. Can you use a flame on the resin? That is a technique that's used in two-part resin because of the huge bubbling problem that you have with two-part resin. I found you just don't have that same problem with UV resin that you would need to use a flame to get rid of bubbles, but I have seen people do it. So I can't say that that's not correct, because I have seen people do it to get rid of some bubbles. All right, so the first layer is clear. We sunk some flowers down in there, and I'm going to cure that piece. So this is the piece I want to just see if it's sticky. See, when I touch it, it has a very slight surface tackiness to it. Some of that is my finger, but if it has any, too much tackiness, like I said, you can just put it in the light. Are there classes on two-part resin? I'm not sure. You'll have to check on michaels.com, their class listing. I believe that they have at least done some classes. So Michaels has done hundreds and hundreds of classes over the past couple of years. And they are all available on Michaels' YouTube channel too. But if you go to michaels.com, it's easily searchable in the classes. You can look at past classes and kind of search if you're looking for like a jewelry class or a knitting class. And that's I found the easiest way to find older classes. All right, so that's been under for 1 minute. And I have some leftover pink resin here that I kept to the side. And now my next layer is going to be pink. And I'm just going to use up the rest of it here. Getting all of that out. And I'm going to show you a little tip for cleanup, because when you use all the resin, it might look a little something like this. And I'm getting this around that little peg. Make sure that the resin goes all the way to the top. Let's see if I can scrape more out so we can just make sure that mold is filled up. One more drop. There we go. Okay, so we're going to cure this at the same time. I'm going to put it in sideways. Same time, I'm just going to kind of put this silicone cup as close as I can get it to the light. And let that excess just cure in there. It's way easier to clean up when you are cleaning up cured resin than it is to deal with this kind of goopiness. You could clean that up using a baby wipe and scoop it out of there, but I like to just cure it in the silicone cup and then it just pops out. All right, so while that's going, I'll do a little more show and tell with some other bezel pieces that we've made. So these pieces were from a Christmas class that we did. These are little bezel ornaments, but you can see that we've compartmentalized inside the bezel. And we created that just using wire. So using some copper craft wire, we cut these wire pieces, and here's another example of that. And then you can make kind of compartmentalized. This class is not on YouTube. This was a premium class. So we do free classes, which this is a free class, but Michael's also does premium paid classes. And so this was a kind of advanced technique that I'm giving you the inside scoop on. From a class in December, but you can see you can kind of segment inside. Here's another example of that technique. This one was used in a mold. This was from a Halloween class where we put a little piece of wire inside the mold, and that just allows you to create separations inside there. This was one of the very first classes that we did. I'm going to turn that on again. This was, oh gosh, it's so hard to see. Let me move this out of the way. This was a galaxy class where we took some bezels and turned them into a pin. So this is a pin that has chain hanging from it, but here's the back of it. You can see the pin back in this sort of galaxy theme. Really easy to do. And then finally, just a little teaser of a technique that you can do. We're still in January, so we're not far past New Year's. So for New Year's, we made these little champagne flutes, and this is an advanced technique where you can create your own bezel. So like I said, we have a lot of shapes of bezels available, but for a specialty shape like this, you can absolutely make your own. If you're handy with some wire and know how to work with wire, you can make these, and then we filled them with little pearls and little, so the only limit is your imagination here. If you want to create compartments inside the bezels, you can. If you want to create your own bezel, you can. It's almost unlimited, the things that you can put inside the resin. All right, so that's been going for a little bit. Here's our silicone cup, which you can just pop this right out of. And by the way, don't throw this away, because what you can do, I'll show you, here's another little tips and tricks. Take some scissors, cut this up, and then use this as your inclusions inside of another resin piece. By cutting things up like that, you can get kind of like a terrazzo or stone effect. And then you are creating new fillers for free for something that you would have thrown away.
Hey, Stephanie, real quick.
Mhm.
Do you have one of those examples with the photos inside of your resin?
Photos. Let me see if I have any photo projects here with me. I may not. We did a whole class on adding photos and paper and stickers to your resin. This was probably back in 2020. But Jen or Felicia, if you can find that class and add the link, because I'm sorry, I don't have a piece that uses a photograph. Renee has a question. Do we offer premium classes? We will be offering premium classes. We have done them in the past. We don't have any on the schedule right now, but we will be offering them. All right, so here's our molded piece. It is now cured. You can see how easily that just pops out. And this is what we have. And that the background, oh, thank you, Felicia, for putting that. She put a link for how to use paper and photos inside UV resin, so everyone can check that out. But let's look at this from the side. So you can see we have kind of our pink layer and then a clear layer, and the clear layer is where those flowers live. So this is basically the same project, one done on a mold and one done in a bezel. Okay. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that I've taken some of the intimidation out of this craft for you. You can see how easy it is. Go ahead and try it yourself. We would love to see your creations. You can use the hashtag UV Resin Craft at the top of every product, UV Resin Craft. Use that as your hashtag. We check those hashtags, and also the hashtag Make It With Michaels. We check that as well to see all of your creations. So thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll be with us on the next time. Thanks a lot, guys.